Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, with our main topic today in the Breakfast Show program. We're discussing today the World Economic Forum Davos, which took place from the 16th of January until the 20th of January in Davos, Switzerland. Well, to shed more light on this, we have the pleasure to have this phone with His Excellency Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Good morning, Your Excellency.
Good morning, my lady.
Well, Your Excellency Ambassador Haridi, how do you see the importance of this edition of 2023 Davos edition of the World Economic Forum, the timing of this forum this year, with the world suffering from or facing several challenges?
Well, of course, as far as timing is concerned, the Davos meetings take place every January. During the last few years, of course, the meetings took place through video conferences because of the COVID pandemic. This year's gathering was in-person meeting, which was attended by two Egyptian ministers, the Minister of Planning and the Minister of International Cooperation. And the upbeat at this year's Davos meeting were more optimistic than expected 1 or 2 months ago. Of course, the highlight of this Davos meeting in 2023 was the appearance of the participation of the Chinese Deputy Prime Minister for Economic Affairs, and he assured the participants at Davos this year that China is back. He meant by that after the end of the lockdown in China that lasted 2 years and hampered the Chinese economy and thus accordingly the international trade and China's economic relations with the outside world. I guess this message that China is back was reassuring to a certain extent. Going over the speeches by leading international experts, by officials, the leading officials whether in the European Central Bank, Madame Christine Lagarde, or the director of the International Monetary Fund. I guess the mood was to a certain extent upbeat. And as the lady director of the IMF told the gathering at Davos, is that the world economy looks better today than the IMF predicted 2 months ago or 3 months ago. So this is good news to a certain extent. Also, a leading American economic expert who was the former Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Larry Summers, although his predictions 6 months ago concerning the world economy were really very gloomy, he told Davos this year that things are getting better. However, still the inflation rates are still in the United States and in Europe. Inflation rates are still a little bit high beyond the targets that the Federal Reserve in the United States or the European Central Bank have already set. As you may know, madam, the target for the inflation rate in the United States by the Federal Reserve is 2%. Now, of course, we are still, the figure is still high. So there is many business leaders and economists at Davos this year warned that interest rates would keep rising, and that would have an effect on consumer spending and on national economies. But having said that, it's welcome that things look greater today from the standpoint of the prospects for international trade, for economic relations, renewed economic relations between the two largest economies, the American and the Chinese economies. So we are optimistic to a certain extent, cautiously optimistic, that in 2023 things will brighten up for international economic relations as well international trade. Of course, if international trade picks up, that's good news for us here in Egypt, because that means more ships, more container ships would transit the Suez Canal, shipping goods from China, from East to the West, to Europe, and probably the United States.
Yes, so Your Excellency Ambassador Haridi, also could you give us your insight concerning the slogan or the title of this year's forum, titled Cooperation in a Fragmented World? And also, could you shed light on the agenda of this year's meetings or conference?
Well, you know that the Davos meetings, they don't have an agenda. As such, it's an international encounter among political leaders, among presidents and kings of various countries, about business leaders, about the leaders of the international and financial institutions. So there is no agenda. But of course, there is every year the management of the World Economic Forum chooses a theme. And as you rightly said, Madam, the theme of this year's Davos meeting was cooperation in a fragmented world. Fragmented world here stands, if I may interpret fragmented world between commas, I guess it's a reference to two major developments in the last 3 years. First of all, the COVID pandemic and its impact is negative impact on international trade, and not only on international trade, but within national economies. And on the other hand, the war in Ukraine, now almost 1 year old. So and then of course the tense relations between China and the United States. I guess these three factors reflect why the people who manage the World Economic Forum have chosen this word, fragmented world. But now, reviewing and reading the speeches, the talks, and the comments that were made by many participants, it seems that the prospects of bringing this phenomenon of fragmented world between commas are much better today, or are better today than they were 3 months or 2 months ago.
Yes, Your Excellency Ambassador Haridi, how do you see the importance of holding this annual forum every year?
Well, the World Economic Forum was or has been the chief spokesman for globalization in the last 30 years. And now, of course, some people question the validity and the importance and the relevance of such conference. But I still believe it's the only international forum that brings together political leaders, business leaders, economists, and they discuss the main trends in international, not only in international economic relations or international trade, but also politics. Of course, what I have in mind, the example that I have in mind is this contrast between the Chinese President Xi Jinping addressing Davos in January 2017, and while the then United States President Donald Trump was acting in a way that ran against the principles that have underpinned globalization in the last 3 decades or more. So I personally believe that these meetings are important because they help us, they help the world to see where things are heading in international trade and international economic relations.
Yes, Your Excellency Ambassador Haridi, how did the participants in the forum tackle the issue of recession and inflation?
Well, as far as inflation is concerned, as I said earlier in our discussion, of course, for instance, Madame Christine Lagarde, the director of the European Central Bank, has warned in her speech against the rise in inflation rate if the European Commission would keep subsidizing some industries within Europe. Also, business leaders have warned that the American Federal Reserve Bank would keep raising its interest rates in 2023. Having said that, now the question is, by how much will the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States would increase interest rates? Would it increase by 3/4 percentage points like it previously did in the last 3 semesters? Or, as one of the members of the Federal Reserve said recently, that the next time the Open Market Committee of the Federal Reserve would meet, it would decide to increase interest rate by 1/4 of percentage point. That, of course, if this holds true, if this comes true, then it's very good news for the world economy and for countries like Egypt and other highly indebted developing countries, madam.
Yes, and how did the forum address the Russia-Ukrainian crisis?
Well, of course, as expected, it was no surprise. The Ukrainian president addressed the Davos meeting. Russia was not invited or was not represented in the Davos meeting, which, of course, I guess it would have been a good idea to invite a Russian representative. Whether if they don't want to invite a politician from Russia, I guess it wouldn't have been a bad idea to invite a Russian business leader to address the conference, so as to ensure equilibrium, to ensure a certain kind of balance. You don't give one party in this war the opportunity to address and to talk about his point of view or his country's point of view concerning the crisis or the war in Ukraine, and you deprive the other party However, regardless of how you name or you call this other party, and you deprive him from the occasion or the opportunity to speak about the Russian point of view concerning the war in Ukraine and the prospects of a ceasefire and of peace between Russia and Ukraine. I guess if we talk about politics this year in Davos, I guess Davos this year has missed an opportunity, a very good opportunity to give room for the Russians to speak about their points of view concerning how to end this war.
Yes, Your Excellency Ambassador Haridi, what about the most important items that came in the recommendations of the forum, or what was the outcome of the forum this year?
Well, of course, there are no recommendations that come out of Davos meetings, as far as I know. But as I said earlier, I guess the mood at Davos this year was surprisingly, and I draw a line, I stress surprisingly, more upbeat than expected. 3 or 4 weeks ago, predictions for the future course of the world economy and international trade were on the gloomy side. Having reviewed the events at Davos and the speeches given and the comments made, I guess we can say that the mood this year was better than expected, and we hope that this mood really reflects the course of the world economy in 2023, despite the geopolitical and economic problems facing the world today.
Yes, I thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your valuable information, Your Excellency Ambassador Hussein Haridi, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Well, I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for following me in this segment. My name is Amal Mukhtar. I leave you with the rest of the segments of The Breakfast Show with my colleague Nermeen Abdurrahman.